G'day guys, Chaos Chronicles. All right, so we're going to have a chat about the time one of the officers at Port Phillip prison nearly killed a prisoner by making him stick a whole salami inside his anus. So no joke, this actually happened. All right, let's get into it. All right, so just so you can have a little bit of context of what it's like there. So there is a unit at Port Phillip Prison that is called Marlborough, right? And it is a unit that is for IDS prisoners, which is intellectually disabled prisoners and like prisoners with mental health problems and stuff like that, that are more safe in that unit than it is putting them out in the general population in mainstream. It's not a protection unit. They still can go to the gym and like you see them down to medical and stuff like that. And but yeah. So anyway, they're only allowed to leave that unit with a screw. So they're only allowed to leave with an officer escort at all times. So they're never allowed to just walk up to like medical or to property or any of those places where you're usually allowed to walk by yourself. So they're not allowed to do any of that, but they're allowed to have jobs. So obviously, because all jobs in prison are supervised by prison officers, that this is okay. And anyway, you find that a lot of them work in the kitchen. I don't mind working in kitchens. They usually have the longest hours of working, and so the longest hours of working means by the time you finish work, you know what I mean, you've only got X amount of hours to go, whereas, say, most kitchens finish around 4 or 5 o'clock, where most other industries finish around 2 o'clock. So it's just more hours that you don't have to spend walking around doing nothing, you know. But yeah, so anyway, they work there and they tend to get all the crud jobs, to be honest. But anyway, they do work down there. And so anyway, this guy was a bit of a character. So he had autism. I'm not sure what type of autism he had. My son has autism. He has Asperger's, so I know that the spectrum is massive and there's so many different. So I'm not sure what his actual condition was, but he did have autism. And so anyway, on this particular day, so back then you were allowed to smoke in jail. And 2015 they took away smoking for good. You know, it's never coming back. Regardless of what people think and say, it ain't coming back. It's done and dusted now. But yeah, so everyone used to smoke outside. So like there was like this little caged area, just a smoko area, but it's caged in and locked in, so you can't run off or whatever, you know. So on this day, the screws used to come out there and have smokes as well, right? And so on this day, so a paddable screw. If you ever hear anyone say they're paddable, in jail terms, it means like, you know, like they're still a dog, but they're paddable, you know. Yeah, so anyway, this screw was paddable and used to have a bit of a joke with the boys or whatnot. And so on this particular day, I don't know how the conversation came about. Now, I wasn't there. I'm just stating that I wasn't there, and I'm just going by what my friends have told me that were there. And, you know, it's common knowledge in the prison that this happened. And so anyway, I'm not sure what they were talking about. I don't know why they were talking about putting things up their ass with a screw around. You know, generally people are putting things there to hide. Of course they know that it happens, but there's certain things you just don't talk about with the officers, and that would be one of them. And anyway, so they were talking about that, and then so the prison officer motioned to the crooks that were out there that weren't intellectually disabled, that, you know, winked, and that he was going to make a joke. And so anyway, he started saying, oh, you know, like talking to the other boys about how he brings all the drugs in and all this. And He brings them in for the bikies and this and that, and which is funny because at the time there was actually like not many bikies at the jail, so there was a time when there was a lot. But anyway, they've got to talking about that, and because the other crooks knew that he was joking, they're just playing along with this screw. And so anyway, they get to talking. They're saying how they need their person that brought it in got caught, and they need someone to bring it in off the visits. And and obviously this guy, right? So this guy would do anything to make anyone happy. He was one of those people that just wanted to be one of the boys. He knew he wasn't, and he wasn't the same as everyone else. His thought process was different than everyone else's. So, he thought a lot different. So anyway, this guy's put his hand up and said, I'll do it. I'll do that for you. And so, this is where the screw said he would take over. And so they were talking, and the screw said, well, how do we know that you can do that? And he's like, I can do it. I promise I can do it. Just trying to show out for the boys, really. And so, yeah, he said, I can do it. And the screw said, well, how much can you take, And he said, well, I think I can swallow about, 10 parcels, he's saying. And the screw said, swallow? No, you won't be swallowing nothing. This is big, mate. You got to put it up your butt. So obviously in jail, people do put things up their butt to hide. It's probably not a bad hiding spot, to be honest, because screws aren't going in there to have a look. And so, the screws obviously played on this, and they've said, well, how much can he? He said, well, heaps, I reckon I could take a fair bit. And then the screw walked off, and the screw came back from the dry room, whatever it's called. I think it's called a dry room. And then it's like a pantry. And anyway, so got one of the salamis. They're about that long. And so, he got that out and said, do you reckon you'd be able to take something this size? That's a decent size, and they've got a decent girth on it. Do you know what I mean? Like, even if he wasn't sure what was going to happen next, this should never have happened. And, even the crooks that, took part in this, 100%, should have got belted and that as well, the ones that took part. And so, I spoke to people about it, and they said that the ones that I spoke to said, how could we have known that was going to happen, And so, yeah, anyway, so the screw said, look, take this and let's see if you can take this whole salami, which once again was about that big, and they've got a bit of girth on it. Do you know what I mean? They're pretty round. And so he said, look, go get that, get some butter out of the cupboard, the pantry, dry room, whatever it's called, and go see if you can take that, right? So this guy's proceeded. He went in the bathroom, or in the locker room, should I say, and tried doing that so hard, right? So he stuck that thing, and he did do it all right. So he came back out and said, yeah, I done it. And the screw was like, well, how much did you do? And he said, well, it's still in there. And so anyway, then some crims had ran off to see, if he was lying, and there's all this blood on the floor. Do you know what I mean? And so what actually happened is him trying to push that inside himself, right? The thing still had the hard plastic bag covering on it. And so he's literally lacerated his bowel. And so he's literally bleeding internally from his anus, internally inside his stomach. And the screws are all laughing about it. And so, this guy nearly died. So he actually had a colostomy bag and everything from it. And so at first, the screw didn't even lose his job. And then the screw lost his job. But yeah, at first, that screw didn't lose their job. And rightly so, do you know what I mean? I think anyone that took part in that, and that's why when I found out about it, I was like, I wanted to know what the go was. Because, like, if crooks played a part in that, then, mate, you need to be dealt with, as I say, accordingly. And, you know, everyone just said that, you know, it was like spur of the moment. The screw was winking at them, and they just played along with it, you know. And, you know, that's when I said, well, that's what happens when you're buddy with screws. Do you know what I mean? That is exactly what happens. Now it's going to blow up in all your faces, because now the whole jail hates you because this guy's nearly died because of the screw, you know. And you could just imagine this guy would be out with his friends, you know, having a good old laugh about what happened. And this poor guy who's like taking advice from someone who's supposed to be looking after him, because, you know, he is an IDS prisoner and they do need to be supervised at all times. And I honestly believe that, you know, well, I can tell you right now that screw didn't come to jail at the same jail he worked at. That would probably be suicide, I would say, and they just wouldn't do that. But yeah, you could imagine that wherever that guy went, that because he went to jail for, you know, hurting a crook, that he would probably, you know, pay the consequences for that. Even if he went to protection, I reckon, you know, they're still crooks. They're going to have something to say about it. But yeah, this was at Port Phillip Prison, and this just shows you how corrupt private prisons are. It's not just Port Phillip that's corrupt. Any private prison is corrupt because it's not under the government eye like a government-run jail. Like anyone that knows, that watches my videos, that if you've been to a government jail and you've been to Port Phillip or Fulham, and there's Ravenhall now, which is run by the same people that run Fulham, yeah, you know that there is a big difference, especially in the things you can get away with. Like, so people at the private prisons just know that, like, so like Port Putrid, Port Phillip, whatever you want to call it, PPP, people just don't want to go there because it's putrid. But for me, I just wanted to go there because you just get away with everything, and like it was just a party all the time. And you know, and the amount of drugs that come in private prisons just because they're private prisons, I don't know why they're, but just you can, like for me, someone who's been in both government and private, mate, the way that they're ran is crazy. So like, so many people that have died at Port Phillip would not have died if they were at, say, MRC or Barwon or one of those newer government jails, you know. They don't allow for that shit to happen. And Port Phillip, mate, they're half the time they're in on the murders, you know. So yeah, just I really think, if you ask me, like for the safety of all crims, you know what I mean? Even like for the ones that are getting violence upon them, and even the ones giving violence, everyone has a duty of care, and everyone should have a right to feel safe in prison, right? And so yeah, I just, yeah. Anyway, let's not go down there. I'll end up talking for another 20 minutes about that. But anyway, there you go, guys. Port Phillip Prison. It is absolutely bonkers. The corruption there is crazy, and like I always say, the corruption goes as high as it can go. Like there's no mucking around at that place, and yeah, so we'll get into it. We'll get into it over time. We have plenty of time. But anyway, guys, if you haven't shot me a subscribe, jump up there and shoot me a subscribe. That would be absolutely fantabulous. And smash that bell. If you smash that bell, it will give you reminders every time I drop a video. That way you'll never miss any of my clips. All right, guys. I have been the Chaos Chronicles. You guys have been absolutely awesome, and I will catch you guys on the next video. Thanks very much. Ciao.